because I'm going to challenge you to look at that cross objectively, with all humility, because, my friends, you might have made that cross for yourself. Hey everyone, it's Mike from Catholic Treehouse. I'd like to welcome you to episode 48 of the Saint in Progress podcast, your source for inspiration, information, and directions for your soul's journey back home to the Father's house. This week, I'm going to jump right in because it's kind of a continuation of last week's episode, Rough Roads and Crosses of the Spiritual Life, which is episode 47. I didn't set out for it to be a two-parter, but it just kind of happened that way. And I was reviewing last week's episode, and I kind of realized that I had left the door open for a possibility of a bad interpretation of what I was trying to get at. So the episode is about the spiritual life and how sometimes our spiritual life can be a rough road, and sometimes our spiritual life can be a cross in and of itself. And I ended the episode with this. The devil will tell you, you don't need the cross. Put it down. Take the shortcut. We need to remember that Jesus tells us that if we are to follow him, we do need that cross. Well, I wanted to make clear that I was talking about the cross of the spiritual life. It's a cross we all have. The fact is we have many, many crosses in our lives, right? And so what I want to talk about today is about a cross I bet you have. It's the one that consumes a lot of your time and energy, one that you pick up and carry every day. One that you defend whenever people even suggest that you put it down. You say boldly and bravely, "This is my cross, and I'm going to carry it." It's a cross that you lean into and one that you really embrace. And what I'm going to say in this episode may hurt because I'm going to challenge you to look at that cross objectively, with all humility, because, my friends, you might have made that cross for yourself. So here's the deal. St. Philip Neri had this quote, and it's a good one and worth examining and spending some time on. Men are generally the carpenters of their own crosses. Now, he's not talking about men versus women. He's talking about men in the mankind versus person kind sort of way. You know, the way people used to talk before like 1990 when all the stuff started to get crazy with the take the word man out of everything because it's offensive kind of thing. So anyway, let's look at that for a minute. Men are generally the carpenters of their own crosses. Now, there are crosses that God truly gives us, and we have no choice but to carry them. These are crosses that are for our own sanctification. Like, for example, I have a torn disc in my back. It's God's will that it happened. I can't decide to put it down, and it's a cross that is mine to carry. Now, why is it for my sanctification? Well, because I'm a prideful person. And having a torn disc means I have to ask my teenage daughters to lift things that are more than like 20 pounds. Now, before this, I would never ask for help, especially from my daughters, because I saw myself as the father. I should be doing the heavy work. I should be doing the big, strong, dirty things. I shouldn't be asking my daughters to do those things. That's pride. Now, I'm forced to ask for help. I'm forced to admit my weakness. Having this torn disc forces me to ask for help from the people I would ordinarily be helping. Therefore, it makes me more humble. Therefore, it's chipping away at my defect of pride. So these crosses are not and cannot be of your own construction if it's something that God has given you and you can't put down. Now, your vocation is another cross that is not of your own construction. Now, pay attention carefully here. By vocation, I'm not talking about your job. What I am talking about is your vocation to either religious life or to the vocation of marriage. Now, if you're called to the vocation of holy orders, then the cross you are carrying is answering God's call for the sanctification of the flock you're called to shepherd. If you're called to the vocation of marriage, while you make the decision to get married to a certain person, you're answering God's call to be yoked together to the cross of marriage for your spouse's sanctification and yours. Just as Jesus carried the cross and mounted the cross and died on the cross for the sanctification of his bride, the church, husbands, you are yoked to your wife for her sanctification and yours. Wives, you're yoked to your husband for his sanctification and yours. And together, you are carrying the cross for the sanctification of your domestic church. So the cross of your vocation, it is not and cannot be of your own construction because you agree to carry it and then God hands it to you. God makes the cross, you agree to carry it. So the question is, what crosses are of your own construction? Well, they're the ones you build as you make the decisions in your life, the big decisions, the important decisions. Now, there's not a set of hard and fast rules here. I'm not going to solve the problem in this episode. That, my fellow saints in progress, is for your spiritual director to help you to discern. What I am going to do, however, is give you some tests that can lead to clues that can help you determine that you might be the carpenter of one of the crosses you're carrying, to open you up to the possibility that you are the carpenter of your own cross. Once you're open to the possibility, then you can go to your spiritual director and you can take some other steps to discern for certain. So, before I get started, let's review one of the most important things from one of our earlier episodes, in particular, episode 3. We lie to ourselves about ourselves. Now go back and listen if you need to, but to recap, we have an infinite capacity for self-delusion, we give ourselves points for good intentions, and we resist legitimate authority. Okay, so buckle up. Here we go. Here are some clues that you have a cross that you're carrying that you built for yourself. Okay. Number 1, you make excuses for why you're carrying it. And your excuses sound like you're trying to convince yourself, not the person you're talking to. Now, a lot of these excuses amount to nothing more than the logical fallacies and cognitive biases I talked about before. If that's the case, that's a clue. Number 2, you didn't pray about it before you went and did it. You also didn't seek wise counsel, such as from your spouse or from a spiritual director. It was emotion over reason. Another thing we talked about in our earlier episodes, and another clue. Okay, number 3, did you feel pressure to do it? That pressure could come from other people, from your family, from your friend group, from your peers at work, from your family's culture, or even from yourself and the standards you have set for yourself. If it wasn't totally free will, well, there's another clue. All right, number 4, your cross is a near occasion of sin for you. Now, what I mean by that is, does carrying that cross make you feel like you have to choose between the cross and doing the right thing? And then do you justify carrying the cross as doing the right thing? Does this cross cause you to veer toward all of the sins of the tongue that I talked about in episode 43? All the different gossip and that kind of thing. If so, there's another clue. All right, number 5. Carrying your cross leads you away from Christ, not to him. By that I mean, your cross isn't sanctifying. It's not chiseling away your defects. If you're not growing in holiness with every step, but instead of racking up reasons to go to confession, there's another clue. And if you lie to yourself about yourself to try to explain these things away, that's certainly a clue. All right, finally, number 6. You have an expectation that other people will help you carry your cross. In other words, if your friendship, your love, your attention, or your approval for another person hinges on whether or not they joyfully embrace your cross, well, that's another clue. So all of these things, what they point to is that you very well might have a cross that has, to be blunt, become an idol for you. An idol that you worship. And God, well, he doesn't take too fondly to idols. But the enemy does. Because you see, my fellow saints in progress, sometimes the enemy will trick you into making a cross that is an idol, so that you are easily led astray, or that at the very least, you're occupied and you can't do the good work that God wants you to do. So you need to take an inventory of the crosses you are carrying with humility and fear and trembling. Evaluate them. And when you identify them, when you identify a cross that is of your own construction, you need to tear it down, because that's an idol and it's wrecking your life. That's it for this week, my friends. Just a couple of notes. I will be on St. Gabriel Radio, AM 820, on Monday morning and talk about the Saints of November. And next week, I'm going to be doing an episode right here on Saint in Progress all about purgatory. The episode will drop on All Hallows Eve, commonly referred to as Halloween. And so I'd like to talk about All Souls Day and purgatory, a very misunderstood precept of the Catholic Church. I'm going to get into all the reasons why we should believe it, all the reasons we should be happy to believe it, and why it is indeed scriptural, even if the word purgatory isn't in there. Okay? So be sure to catch next week's episode. So that's it for this week, my friends. As always, love God and your neighbor. Stay in a state of sanctifying grace. Pray your rosary for peace this month, and do it together with your family if possible. Don't forget to pray for the conversion of hearts of all those who have fallen away from the faith. And as always, remember, my friends, that you are a saint in progress. So go out there and be a saint.